Hi, this is Kirk Davis, Executive Director of Camps. We're here today with Michelle Bomberger with Equinox Business Law Group. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Kirk, thanks.
Oh my goodness, I've been looking forward to this conversation because first of all, we use you for our attorney, and so we appreciate you, and we've seen you in action. I mean, you've been a very active member of Camps, and working with our events committee and other assignments and sponsoring events. And I mean, you've really been active with the manufacturing community.
Yeah, I've enjoyed being involved with camps. I've been a member since almost the beginning when I was introduced to Tom,
Oh,
and really just a community that I feel really connected to. I think manufacturers are really about one another and growing the industry,
yeah.
and it's really fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, it's been so great to get to know you and your staff better as had more interaction with you and your staff. And so I don't know, I feel that manufacturers, because I know you serve other industries, not just manufacturing, but I mean, you're certainly in a law firm that I think attorneys that manufacturers should feel very comfortable with. So.
Yeah, thanks.
No, I appreciate that very much. So, when you talk about Equinox Business Law Group, you say this is the law the way it should be. So, what is your approach, and why do you say that?
Yeah, the way law should be, it should be transparent, it should be valuable, it should be timely, it should be cost effective. The way that most folks view legal is as an expense item that they should minimize at all costs. Just make it as small as possible. But business law is it's a part of your business. It's something that is integral in everything you do, whether you realize it or not. So how do we help companies to engage with legal proactively, to build the necessary infrastructure, regulatory infrastructure, contractual infrastructure, employment infrastructure, so that the company is safe and secure as it grows? When something goes sideways or something changes, there's confidence that everything's going to be okay because we've built it that way. We've built it so we know what happens. And so the way it should be is to enable a proactive approach.
Yeah.
And we do that through the way that we do our business model. We use a more of a general counsel solution where you have a subscription base. That's kind of the most common way that people look at it. Subscription-based model that's all inclusive. So it really encourages asking that quick question without worrying about how much it's going to cost to ask the question.
Yeah, that's very valuable because I think that a lot of people think about attorneys and accountants and other professions who bill by the hour. Like, I'm afraid to ask a question, but you've taken that part away. You don't have to worry about that now.
Yeah, I mean, if what you're getting is, truly valuable for your business. And then another piece that I didn't mention was business focus. So this valuable, what does that mean? It means that it really is meaningful and practical and applicable to your business. And so our team is business people who are also attorneys. So really kind of coming at it with what are we trying to do here and what is the right answer? Not just here's, a legal document for you to implement. So our goal again is to just sort of help you to build a business that is properly prepared for the stuff that happens in business.
Yeah, and very, very, legal sound foundation. I really like that.
Yeah.
So you've taken the time, and I thought it was very interesting that you took the time to build a business health assessment. So I think that's something you work with new clients with. Is that right?
We do. So I mentioned our general counsel services, and one of the things that we use as sort of a backdrop for that, and for any new client who's interested in it, it's complimentary, is to go through and just get a sense for where is this business? Where did it come from? Where is it going? What is, solidly in place? What are those things that maybe we didn't quite put in place formally, that we maybe bootstrapped or band-aided or have just sat on the back burner for a long time? And so we go through this business health assessment and we talk about just all the areas of the business. We talk about, facilities and equipment, and we talk about employment, and we talk about leases and contracts and salespeople and vendors, and where are we manufacturing, and what do those relationships look like, how formal or informal they are. We talk about privacy, which is a big emerging area
Yes.
that folks don't know a lot about. And then coming out of that conversation, we have a sense of, based on where we've been, where we're going, here are the priorities of this business. And then we translate that into a kind of evaluation of each of those priorities and the risk. Is it a regulatory risk issue? Is it a, compliance issue from a state or federal standpoint? Is it an HR issue? So that we get a sense of scale, right? Not all things that need to be fixed as quickly or as urgently as others. And so then we deliver a memorandum to the business to kind of outline those things, and then we can talk about how we want to prioritize tackling them, either project by project or as part of a bigger package.
Manufacturers, and I know other industries too, but particularly manufacturers, are really safety conscious. I mean, when it comes to their people, there's a lot of safety practices, and I go to any manufacturing facility, and you have to wear all the safety equipment, and you see their safe practices that they've learned over time. The same thing's kind of true legally, right? I mean, what you're doing here with this health assessment is you're helping them assess their own legal safety, if you will.
That's right. And there are, multiple tools that kind of play into that. Sometimes it's, insurance. That's sort of our natural default is, oh, I have insurance for that.
Yeah.
But we also know that insurance isn't, foolproof.
No.
And it's not a fail-safe. So do we have contracts in place that help us balance where insurance maybe doesn't fit in? And we look at the appropriateness of a particular, written contract, formal contract, informal contract, based on the nature of that relationship. And then policies and procedures. I mean, having something in writing that helps the team, whether it's safety or whether it's, inventory management, having those systems in place that allow you to be accountable for what's happening in the business. So all those tools kind of work together as risk mitigation tools that we can help folks to take a look at and say, well, you think you're covered here, but you're probably exposed.
Well, something you said that I really appreciated was that this is complimentary. You don't charge for this. And I think that's wonderful, because, it's wonderful that you took the time to build that tool, but also to make it available. And then this allows you to really tailor make your approach. So you don't have like a standard 1, 2, 3 approach. You can actually tailor make your approach to the company, where they're at and what they need. What I also like, though, is that you mentioned that you'll make this written summary of the assessment available within a week, which that's quite a commitment.
Yeah, and we commit to delivering, all of our work to clients within a week. Because one of the things you go back to say, what does it mean to say business law the way it should be? Well, we've all heard stories about, companies that have gone to, their advisors, and 3-4 weeks later, they don't have a response yet. The way it should be is you need to have it in order to move your business forward. And if you need it, today, we need to make it happen today. Now, that shouldn't be all the situations, granted.
Right.
We do commit to no more than a week turnaround on all of our deliverables, because I know as a business owner myself, a week is a long time when you're trying to get something done.
Yeah.
And so I know that all of our clients feel the same way. It's like, I got to get this thing moving. When is it going to be back? And so that's our commitment.
Well, and I love that responsiveness, because I know that's one of your values, to be responsive to your business clients. And so, I think with my experiences with other law firms and very large law firms, sometimes you're a little bit like a number rather than a person, and you're kind of put into a box and a checklist that they follow, but not necessarily, what I needed. So yeah, I really like your tailor-made approach. You've really thought through this assessment, because I really like how it covers the topics like your corporate strategy, your compliance, human resources, financial planning, so exit planning. And I'm thinking of the manufacturers that we work with at camps. Most of them are growing. I mean, they're growing. I think there's merger and acquisition opportunities. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these different things. I know there's intellectual property opportunities, patents and such. So I think in a climate like we've got right now, that there's things they have to be aware as their businesses get to more complex stages, I guess. More employees, more legal contracts, more client contracts, maybe even supply chain type contracts. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think COVID has opened the door to even more opportunity to expand. So we've got a lot more clients that are hiring outside of their local jurisdiction, whereas a year ago, they wouldn't really have thought much about that.
Yeah.
And the implications of that type of hiring and being in multiple jurisdictions. And then you have something like data privacy, which is an emerging area that a lot of folks are like, oh, that doesn't really apply to me. But as different states are implementing different rules, they're going to begin to apply to everyone. And, we're kind of waiting for, when there'll be a federal mandate, because of the fact that right now you have this patchwork. And for any given company, you've got to understand how you fit into that patchwork. And the fact that, you don't have somebody in California doesn't mean that CCPA doesn't apply to you necessarily. So there are these areas that are, as you grow and as you expand, and as you expand your channels, a lot of people are going online now that weren't online previously. You're exposing yourself to some of these things unknowingly because they just have never applied before, and it's just not on your radar. And so we have a unique opportunity to raise those issues and say, hey, by the way, you may not have ever thought of this before, but given what I heard here, you may want to look into it. And so it's a really nice opportunity to just sort of, put the bug in someone's ear to be able to keep that in mind as they continue down various channels or paths or strategies.
This reminds me of that, very cliche saying that there's people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who wonder what happened. And I think that the ideal client for you and the type of business owner is the type of person who makes something happen. They're wanting to be ahead of the game, and they're wanting to preemptively avoid problems rather than wait till things break and then have that expense and trouble. And I think it causes a lot of trouble when people don't think ahead on these legal issues.
Yeah, and I think, CAMPS members are great examples, I think, of forward-looking and forward-thinking executives, right? The folks who have joined CAMPS and are actively involved in CAMPS are there for that collaboration and that learning and that opportunity to be around other people who are like-minded, but maybe innovative in a very different way.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly the kind of people that we enjoy working with. Most of our general counsel clients are looking at, how do I do this better? How do I do this smarter? And they know that legal is a piece of that. And again, if we can get them to stop thinking about legal as a little piece here, little piece there, but rather a part of what the company needs in order to be safe and strong, that's really our goal, is to how do we get in there and really help them build strength and infrastructure in their business for the future.
Well, I think one of your big claim to fame, and as people know you and get to know you better, is the regulations and laws are changing all the time. You talked about data privacy, and I think employment laws are changing, and there's regulatory, environmental type laws that are changing all the time. But I notice that you do a lot to educate. You've got your monthly webinars, and you record those. You put those on your website, I see.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that somebody who engages with you is also tapping into a treasure mine of knowledge, and so it's not like you're sharing what you know. It's not just like I have to guess at things, but you've got a lot of educational tools, I think, to help. So you do the webinar.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have again, visibility into areas that the average business owner doesn't, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't have to read every newsletter under the sun in order to understand what's happening. And so what we try to do with our focus events, which are monthly, open seminars, they're online. They were online before we moved them online before COVID, and so that sort of ended up being convenient timing for us. But they're available online live where you could ask questions, but also the recorded version is on our website and YouTube channel. But what we really try to do is think about what is in the minds, what are the active issues that businesses are facing, and to present on those topics so that we can keep people informed. And I would say, about half of them are truly, legal items that people should know that someone from our team is presenting. But the other half are often not traditionally what you think of as legal, but important information that businesses should be paying attention to. So for instance, We've done programs on, building culture in a remote workplace, or, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or, we've got one coming up on the value of IP in your business. So yes, there's a legal component to that, but there's also a very practical value to your business of building IP. And so what we try to do is find things that are topical, timely, and get those in front of folks so that they can use those proactively in their business.
I noticed that you are that your firm, your whole philosophy and approach, and we had Ashley just present at the camp's regulatory and tax update, and she did such a great job. But you guys really are purpose driven and you're value driven. And I know your values keep coming up I think in those webinar topics, but also in your social media as I've observed you over time and in our conversations. So I think that you seem to really understand the value beyond the law. It's there's other factors that I think business leaders have to think about, and I just love that you're really tuned into those, and it shows. It really shows.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And we do feel very purposeful in what we do, and it's why we look at the world from this lens of what should this experience be. And generally speaking, when you ask a business owner about their relationship with their counsel, it's either kind of, blah or negative. And now and again, you get a really positive experience that folks have. But how do we change that dynamic so that it's not really about the cost factor, but the value? And it's really such an important part of building a strong business is to understand where those risks are and put the right mechanisms in place to mitigate them going forward. And the business is going to drive that. The legal doesn't drive it, the business drives it. Yeah. And so our goal is to understand the business in a way that we can then put the right tools in place for the right level of risk.
You didn't say it as directly as I'm going to say it, but I truly believe that what you guys are doing is you're helping business leaders sleep better at night. Because these issues, there's a lot of issues I think that could really worry a business owner, but I think you're thinking ahead, you're really up to date, and you're seeing not only what's here today, but you're seeing what's coming down. That's what we heard from Ashley. You hear some things that are happening, they're going to happen, looks like they're going to happen, and you're helping people really stay ahead of the game. And I think there's a level of comfort, and peace when you know that you're partnered with somebody who is, current and thinking ahead. So I think that's something for people to think about.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned sort of the peace of mind, sleep at night thing, and I think that's subconscious, right? People don't necessarily think of legal as doing that, but it is in fact what we're doing. And you mentioned the trending, what are the trends that are coming? What are things I need to be aware of? But even beyond that, if this major contract goes sideways, the ability to sleep at night is, I know what it says. I know what my rights are. I know what this is going to look like. Mm-hmm. That keeps you from worrying about what happens if this goes sideways.
Right.
What is my exposure if this goes sideways?
Sure.
And so
you're preventing.
Right, I talked about the second half of the contract, right? The second half of the contract, all of those what ifs. And that's where we do our best work.
Well, something you and I talked about is that a lot of business owners have had years of experience reading legal contracts, but I do think that there is sometimes meaning in some of those words that escape the average person, right? And I've experienced this with companies as I was asked to read and review contracts that in the broader context of laws and case laws and regulatory changes, I might not fully understand what all those words really mean or what their implications are in terms of my risk. So that's why I think it's better. I'll sleep better if you're doing it for me.
I would agree. But I think you're absolutely right. So, most of our clients have loads of experience in reading contracts. They have seen it from, start to finish, top to bottom. But all those sections that folks think of as, quote, boilerplate, they need to be tailored to that relationship. They need to be reviewed in light of that relationship, because one word or a phrase that's not in there may eliminate, a huge percentage of where your protection is.
Mm.
And so I think most business people do a great job of looking at the first half of the contract, the business terms, because that's, you want to make sure you get those right. And then they kind of gloss over the second half. It looks right. And that's often where those real protections come into play, and where the real value of the lawyer's, eyes on that is, okay, this is missing right here, this piece, which matters here, and it might not matter anywhere else, but it matters here. And so there's real value in that, even though it looks like they're all very similar, they're quite different, and the applicability is different in different situations.
Yeah, I've known you for years, even before I became the executive director of camps, and heard about you, seen you around, and then I've gotten to know you better now. But I think it's valuable that you have experience with a lot of different industries. So yes, you really do enjoy working with manufacturers, and you get us, and I appreciate that. But I know that you also serve companies in the construction, hospitality, professional services, software sectors, and so. The point I wanted to make is that you are a real trusted partner. We've known you for years. You've been here. We've known you, like you said, from almost the beginning of camps. You've stuck through thick and thin, and you're just somebody I think that companies can really rely on. I mean, you've been around, you've seen a lot, and I don't know, what's been your experience looking at all these different industries that you get this chance to look behind the curtain?
Yeah, I mean, you look at a business's legal infrastructure, as I would call it, and it's going to be driven by a few different factors. And those factors are going to determine the complexity of their needs and the volume of their needs. And so, some industries tend to be, low complexity, low volume.
Yeah.
Maybe your typical consulting company, right? You have a standard contract, not a very high risk engagement. You don't get a lot of pushback, and the business is not very highly regulated.
Yeah.
But you may have another professional services entity that has, maybe it's still low complexity, but they've got dozens and dozens of contracts coming in, or they've got more complexity because they're operating in multiple states with employees. And so each of these sort of metrics will drive that. And then you have something in biotech, highly regulated, potentially high complexity. Maybe they've got outside investment. And so all of those things are going to kind of determine what level of legal engagement is appropriate for that business. And sometimes it's, a really solid foundation, and then there's not a lot after that. And sometimes it's every other week. So it's industry, and then it's also, the nature of how that business operates that are going to drive those differences.
Boy, I'll tell you, just listening to you and describing your experiences, I mean, it's evident that you see the detail, and I think that's what makes it so that, people can trust you more, and they can say, this is a person I could really work with, because chances are you probably have seen a lot of what people are going to be going through. We've talked about the fact that you take a holistic approach to the business, and things like the corporate strategy, sales, sales contracts, human resources, could be property issues, intellectual property, vendor management. So there's you work with the whole business, and I think that shows up in your answer.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, you think about how a large company would have a general counsel sitting down the hall. They're paying them a salary to help the business, very, very generally. Well, those folks are typically sitting in on, strategic planning. They're sitting in on the leadership or the SLT type meetings. And then they're helping in the day-to-day for, can you research this? Can you review this?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand this? Can you negotiate this? All of those things that happen every day is the other thing that they do. And that's the role that we play for smaller companies. For companies that don't have the kind of volume for a full-time person, but have enough where it makes sense to have legal involved in, hey, we're thinking about this acquisition, or we're thinking about moving our manufacturing operations, or we're thinking about, pick your strategy. What are the implications to that? The same way that you might look at tax implications to it.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. And so by serving in that capacity, we understand kind of the goals and objectives and the strategy, and then can help with the tactical implementation of it.
Yeah, we are, CAMP is just getting ready this month to launch our new innovation committee. And we're bringing together some of the most innovative minds, because innovation isn't just for startups. Innovation's for everybody, right? It's something we have to do. You innovate or die is kind of the point. But I'm looking at the wide range of topics that you engage in, and when companies are thinking about innovation, I think a lot of these topics come up. For instance, mergers and acquisitions, come up, because sometimes they don't come up with new innovations. They buy companies who have those innovations. Also, I think contract negotiation and contract maintenance is just a ongoing, battle, I think, for almost every business. But intellectual property, I think, is a big part of innovation. And so I don't know, it's that one's a tough one. I've worked with some companies who work with patents and stuff like that. It's a pretty complex area of law, I would imagine.
It is, and patent is one of those areas that we would agree with you. And so we have some partners that we would send that off to, because it really is very specific in nature, and you want someone who knows what they're doing that. But from a strategy standpoint, and from, we do trademarks and copyrights in-house, because those are really important parts of the IP portfolio as well. And then just looking at when you are, let's say, a company has patents, as you're entering into contracts and relationships, how does that IP fit into each of those relationships? So while it's independent, maybe from a, filing standpoint, and we would want to use that patent counsel to help advise us on how to protect it through contracts and other relationships. It plays into so many other parts of the business. And so, understanding that big picture is really important. We find a lot of our clients, have, specific counsel or advisors in different areas, whether that's, outsourced HR, or whether that's, patent counsel. But it's still really beneficial to have a central point of managing that risk infrastructure and legal infrastructure for the business, so that everyone knows what's happening in the different sectors. When it's really siloed, we've got one company doing corporate governance, and one company doing leases, and one company doing our outsourcing, and one company doing our patents, and they don't know what the other one's doing. You tend to have some conflicts potentially, or gaps, because there's not one ringmaster who's corralling all the pieces and making sure.
That makes so much sense to me, to have somebody who's got their eye on the bigger picture, and like you said, pulling it all together. And I think in this day and age, intellectual property, like you said, trademarks and copyrights and things like that, it's so much easier just to hand that over to you. And, I don't know, sometimes I think those are a big pain to try to do.
Well, I think sometimes, the online world has made things that are complicated look easy, right? Yeah. So whether that's, going to the Secretary of State and setting up your entity yourself, or whether that's going to the USPTO and filing your trademark yourself, you certainly are capable of going and filling out the form.
Yes.
Whether you kind of understand the implications of the boxes that you're checking and the information you're providing is a different thing. And that's, I think, where the value comes from having legal involved is, there's a difference between, setting yourself up in this class versus that class under the USPTO's database. So, we have the experience and the background to be able to, troubleshoot some of that in a different way than the business owner does. And obviously they know their business, and, we look at our clients as peers. I mean, the executive team knows a whole lot more about a lot of the business than we do. And we are, support to them in helping to make the right decisions for them to move forward toward their goals. So, we rely on the business a lot to make sure that the way we're thinking about things is the right way to think about them. And we're implementing the right kinds of tools that are going to help them accomplish their own goals.
You know, I had an opportunity in my career to work with hundreds of startup companies, but my advice was always, I know you could fill out the forms. I know you could go to an online service and just fill in the blanks kind of a thing. But I said, the very reason that you're setting up an entity and the very reason why you're doing trademarks and copyrights is for legal protection. And I said, I don't know why you wouldn't have an attorney who knows you and your company and your goals, you know, do that for you to ensure that you're really protecting what you think you're protecting. So yeah, I always recommend those legal services. Now, most manufacturers, if not all, I think all manufacturers have real estate attached to their business. Now, some may be leasing spaces, but a lot of manufacturers own their own real estate. And I know that's another, like you said, it's kind of another area that you could silo off, but it could be better off to be part of the overall legal structure and legal strategy.
Yeah, I think so. Part of it is, how it's owned, who's involved. Is it the same parties that are involved? But it's definitely a part of the business's, asset base.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a part of its, risk profile and potentially task profile, depending on how it's structured. We definitely leverage outside counsel for certain kinds of real estate transactions, because especially as a buyer, you want to make sure you know what you're getting. You want to make sure that you've caveated all those pieces, and it can be a very complex area of law as well. But absolutely, I mean, that's one of those really valuable assets that you want to make sure you protect and you build into, that overall business infrastructure.
Well, I think it's really, really smart. And I know that I don't remember what the percentage is, but some large percentage of companies, because of an older ownership, boomer ownership, are looking at succession and transition issues. And I know that the general guidance is start early. So if you're seeing a business transition in the next 5-10 years, you should probably get busy on that at this point. And I can see where everything we've talked about would kind of set the stage and have things right for an eventual business transition.
Yeah, one of the things that we find is that sellers are surprised by how many questions come at them during the due diligence process. Because it's a really interesting dynamic. Yeah. The seller kind of feels like their business, I've been running this thing for many, many years. Everything's in order. I mean, it's fine, right? And the buyer comes in with their due diligence checklist, which is, 10 pages of, I want to see copies of every single thing that this company's ever made. And the seller's like, really? I mean, I told you it's fine.
Yeah.
Why don't you trust me? And the buyer says, well, I do trust you. I just need to see all these things. Yeah. And if sellers aren't prepared for that, I find that it really can create, a difficult dynamic between the buyer and the seller. And so one of the things that we find in our role is to, one, ensure that sellers kind of, as they're talking about exit, that they understand that this is going to be a tedious process.
Yes.
But two, let's start early from our standpoint, not even with, what is the deal going to look like? How much money do you need? Because there are definitely people who do that, and that's super important. Yeah. But from our standpoint, let's kind of go through what one of those due diligence checklists look like. Let's go through that laundry list and make sure that we have everything tidied up and ready to go. And so when they say, can you send us X? Sure thing, it's right here. And so that's where we see our job comes in on the pre-planning for a transaction, is to make sure that the company looks really tidy and pretty and organized, and it's easy for the seller to just sort of say, here's the data room, everything's there, good to go, which I think alleviates a whole lot of stress.
Oh, it does. Yeah, I've been parts of those, and I've been with companies who didn't have it, and like you said, it's the tension that it sets up between the buyer and the seller versus those who've had it in place, and it's a no-brainer at that point.
That's
so
right.
It makes it. I think it instills a lot of confidence on both sides.
It does.
So I mentioned before that you're a very purpose-driven and value-driven law firm, and I think that you're a very value driven and purpose driven, person and business leader yourself. And I know you talk about, your values, but I wanted to go through them real quick, like integrity and transparency and respect, value, and responsiveness. I think those are such appropriate values for what you do for businesses. But for just a moment here, what's been your experience with sharing your values and holding your staff accountable to these types of values?
It's a great question. We actually, our monthly focus event this morning was on using your core values to lead with empathy. And
Wow.
so I was thinking about this as part of that program, because that program was talking about personal core values as a leader. And my journey with the core values is, when I started the company 15 years ago, we created, that would be me, we the company,
Yeah.
created this list of things that I felt would be important to our customers, that we are committing to our customers. And that was sort of my vision of what core values were. And those still remain, I think, on very solid ground. The items that you listed there are things that we commit to every day. A few years ago, I joined an organization called EO, Entrepreneur Organization. And they have an accelerator program that is, almost like a mini MBA, although it's very focused on sort of people, cash, execution, and strategy. And so there's these sort of 4 components. And they positioned through that program core values as part of the people piece, not the kind of customer and sales piece.
Okay.
And so we did an exercise internally and talked about, okay, so these things that we were holding out to the public, are those things that resonate with us internally? And the answer was, yeah, we can make that work, right? We can take each one of those words and we can apply it to how we work internally. And then last year, just before COVID, at our annual retreat, we did a culture session. What is our company culture? And it was the whole team. And of course, as a founder, you're a little apprehensive about bringing the whole team into something you created 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But it was really fun to have the team, clean slate, brainstorm. Who are we? Who are we as a company? And those things are all part of who we are. But we were able to kind of finesse them a little further. And it was a great exercise in applying our behaviors and our priorities as a company to those words and to, who we want to be. And so that's sort of the core values journey. So it actually is really important to who we are and how we work, is that those words are meaningful and that we know what they mean so that we can deliver on them.
Yeah, I think it's so obvious. And, I think a couple of questions that should be in anybody's mind watching this is first of all, are there areas of vulnerability, of legal vulnerability that Michelle could help me with and her team? I think there's an opportunity here to get ahead of potential risk and potential vulnerabilities that literally, like we mentioned, might help you sleep better at night. But the other thing that I think somebody has to really think about is do I want to work with and partner with somebody who's purpose driven and value driven, like you have expressed, I think, so wonderfully throughout this whole talk. But if you're a manufacturing company that's growing, you're successful, this legal protection that we're talking about is really going to help you get ahead of the game. You're going to be that type of a business leader. And anyway, I think Equinox Business Law Group is the company you want to partner with.
Well, thank you, Kirk. I appreciate that.
I'm trying to say nice things all through the whole video here, but there's only nice to say. I mean, really, you've thought through your business model, and it's not just you. It's every one of your employees that we've ever interacted with are the same. Ashley just came and presented, for us, and just did a very quality job. Answered questions, and she was helpful and shared documents with us. And it's been a real pleasure to see. I mean, a lot of times you see a big difference between the founder and the employees. Like you said, almost a different culture. But we don't see that so much in your office. It's like everybody's on the same page, and I really enjoy hearing about these things that you're doing as a company foster that type of culture and to, to have the unity that I see within your company. So,
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, we really work hard on finding a team of attorneys that truly is business focused, business centric, with a goal of being solutions oriented and helping them to achieve their goals. So it's good to hear that's what you're seeing and that's what you're hearing as well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for your time, Michelle. This has just been a really insightful interview because I think there are a lot of areas, and you mentioned it earlier, that you have done a lot and you're doing a lot to help people be prepared for these COVID-19 issues that are coming up. So again, if you're interested in current events and if you're interested in trending, future things to think about, Equinox Business Law Group is really, who you need to partner with. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.